this webinar. Uh, I am Rashonda Tate, and I am a journalist, author, a media buyer, all of the above, public relations. I have a little bit of experience in all of these different areas. And so I want to respect your time and go ahead and get started. And this is fluid. I want to give you information, but if at any point you want to stop and ask a question, feel free to jump right in. Or of course, you can always put it in the chat. We'll have someone monitoring the chat. But I just want to go ahead and jump right in, and I'll start by sharing my screen. All right, so basically we're talking about media buys as a way to expand media coverage. Why media matters, from television to social media news feeds, the media plays a massive role in shaping the world as we see it. Now, we know that consumers turn to media to decide what to wear, what to buy, where to go, and virtually all aspects of their lives. And the goal of media buying is to identify and purchase ad space on channels that are relevant to the target audience at the optimal time for the least amount of money. So I always like to start with asking you a question for you to ask yourself as you're trying to decide where it's best to spend your money. How do you shop? How do you decide what to purchase? Do you look at social media? Do you go through traditional forms of advertising? Think about yourself and then move to look at who is your audience? Who are you trying to reach? Your gender, the age, the behavioral aspects of your consumer or customer. So those are things to take into mind to where you start in determining where you want to spend your money. So the most cost-effective media buys, and these are what I really wanted to talk with you guys about today. And these are in the order of the most cost-effective. Of course, social media. That is that will cost you the least amount. Then you move on to e-marketing, branded content, print, radio, and of course, television. That's where many of us, when we think traditional advertising, that's what many of us think about. Whenever someone mentions an ad. Well, traditional advertising really does include newspaper, radio, TV, magazine ads, billboards, anything else of the sort. But one of the things we wanted to do is show you some other ways. A lot of times, many of you may think I'm going to automatically just start with the news station. I'll call the news station. And you may have a great product you want to advertise. You may have a great event you want to advertise. But if someone walks into a building and shoots it up, it's out the window. If we heard the saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, that is true, and your story will get kicked off in a heartbeat. So there are other ways for you to look at getting your information out to the people. So I want to start with social media. That's about expanding the reach and the visibility to reach new customers at a low entry cost and gain audience insights through a wide range of formats. Now, there are so many areas that people can do social media buys in. From LinkedIn, a lot of people don't realize that is one of the highest places where you can go and get the most bang for your buck by advertising on LinkedIn. You also have, of course, the Facebooks and the Instagrams. Those are all places. Another place you might want to look when you're in terms of advertising are the TikToks. I've yet to master TikTok. My children know it backward and forward, but that's if you're looking to reach a young demographic, you might want to explore social media. Another area where you can go with your media marketing is e-marketing. That is a scheduled series of emails used to nurture leads and current customers with the purpose of encouraging engagement and increasing sales. Now, when you think e-marketing, you tend to think e-blasts. And a lot of times, I don't encourage e-blasts unless they're directly targeted, because I want you to think back to the last e-blast that you opened. I know a company that sends e-blasts, and I groan every time I see them in my inbox because they send me 30 e-blasts a day. So you want your e-marketing to be strategic. There's also a thing called branded content. Content produced or funded by an advertiser, designed to build awareness for a brand by associating with content that shares its values. Now, I'm not quite sure of the demographics of everyone on the call today, But branded content is something that we're seeing a lot of, and that is something that you can utilize quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up an example of a branded content that we use at the newspaper a lot. So I'm also the managing editor for the Defender Network. And so you'll see this is branded content is sponsored by. So this is basically an ad from Texas Children. Well, instead of just advertising one particular thing, they've written articles on how to keep kids active and safe this summer. So they've provided the photo, they've provided the article, and it's promotion for the company. They even have the interviews in here with who they want to profile, and all of their information is in here. They've broken it down, and they close with learn more at Texas Children's. So this looks like if someone goes in and they think that they're reading just a regular newspaper article, which it is, but it is from a sponsor, and the sponsor has written it, and their ad is placed right in here. This is another area of branded content, Parenting Today. And all of this is their stories from Texas Children's Hospital, and they're to promote Texas Children's Hospital. And you see they have their newsletter sign up and all of that there. All right, so let's go back to the slideshow. That's what branded content is. Print, of course, you know what print is. Advertisements that are printed in hard copy in publications, newspaper, magazines, journals. They're likely to be read by your target audience. Print is, you'll often hear that print is a dying breed. We would beg to differ on that. We do still have a lot of people that pick up the newspaper. Now, however, what a lot of newspapers are doing, both the larger newspapers, the smaller weeklies, which I urge you to not discredit those, they're offering packages. So you'll get the print in the paper and you'll get digital. And many of the publications have large digital reaches. So you will definitely want to look at combining your print with your e-marketing and your digital advertising. Radio, buying commercials to promote products or services on air. And of course, you know, that's pretty standard. And then of course, the big one is television, the process of creating and airing commercials on television with the aim to promote a product or service. So in terms of advertising in these different areas, what you have to start with is trying to determine what works best for you. You know, companies use these various advertising avenues to get in front of an audience. So the key to any successful marketing campaign is more than just a catchy slogan. It's what puts you in front of your audience in repeat. In order to build campaigns that drive marketing return on investment, your team will have to have a strong resonating message that can make its way to your audience at the right time and the right price. So I want to start with, I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit. I want to start with the advertising without cost, without paying. If you're looking for a way to promote your product or your service or your event, one of the best ways is to write your press release. To write your story, not a press release. Write a story and put the interviews in that you want and send with a high resolution photo to all of the media outlets. And you'd be surprised. There's such a need, a demand for content, how easily they'll copy and paste, and you have a story posted on a website or in a newspaper or in a periodical. So always look at going ahead and getting that done on your own. It's amazing. If you can see, we call them the branded content or a canned feature. If you want to profile someone in your company, write a canned feature on them. So that's basically a news story that you write yourself, and you send it out along with a brief email on why this is important or why your readers would find this of interest. And most of these places nowadays, like everyone else, is short-staffed. They're short-staffed. So if they can copy, paste, put your high resolution photo on, then that means they can go home early. So you'll always want to look at that as an option first. Of course, you want to reach out to the television stations themselves, but always keep in mind, like we said earlier, that if it bleeds, it leads. But you also can look at times. If you try and get someone to come cover something at 8 o'clock in the morning, your chances of getting that are not going to happen because their staff doesn't usually get in until 9 o'clock. So they're not going to bring someone in early, pay overtime for your event. It has to be some major news. So it's those type of things to keep in mind as you're crafting the things that you want to get coverage for. When we're looking at what you want to pay your money for, we of course know that the most expensive part of advertising is television advertising. In the Houston market, you can easily spend up to $150,000 for a 30-second spot. And it all depends on what time you want it to air, when you want it to air, what is the ratings of those stations. So those are things that you need to take into consideration. And I think that most of us, unless you're tied to a large company, you don't have the price tag to do a 30-second commercial on a major 6 o'clock news or a 10 o'clock news. But the things that you do need to know that go into the factors that go into consideration on your final price tag: the TV station's ratings, the TV show your ads will air on, the demand to be in a select time slot, the size of the television audience, and the length of your TV commercial. Now, you can expect to see some Houston TV stations offer time slots as low as $15 during the day, while prime time slots can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per airing. You can expect on radio, you can get a 30-second slot on the radio station for as little as $300. Take, for example, a KMJQ. You can get a $300, but you have to keep in mind, how many times do you have to hear something on a radio ad before it registers? So any effective radio ad needs at least 7 slots. So that's $300 at minimum you're looking at in terms of getting your advertisement on the radio. So let me pause for a minute to see if we have any questions.
Yes, Rashonda, can you speak a little bit about the cable packages? Because I know that oftentimes those are a cheaper alternative, you know, in a market. And we're in Houston, but many of these other people may.
Okay, she told us that her internet was spotty at Prairie View. Yes, absolutely. One of the things that a viable option is definitely in terms of television, the cable packages. You can get cable packages for about half of what you would pay at regular television stations. And the primetime packages, of course, will run a little bit more, but it all depends on the audience you're trying to reach. I would highly suggest cable as a option, because it depends on the audience you're targeting, but you really can reach those audiences. Just think back to whenever you're watching CNN. I'm a regular CNN watcher. I can tell you the commercials that air every single night on CNN, because I know if I want to buy a chair, in fact, I have my X chair here that I got from a CNN commercial, but that commercial on cable aired almost nightly. And so that's one of the drawbacks to cable, is that you do need to be consistent in your messaging, but it is a viable option. And it is a lot cheaper than doing your traditional mainstream channels. Let's see, is there anything? Nothing in the chat. Are there any other questions? Well, while you're thinking of questions, let me go back to social media. In terms of the advertising on social media, the return on investment, 76% of content marketers used LinkedIn, followed by Facebook at 66%, 29% at Twitter, 17% at Instagram, and 11% at YouTube. Now, YouTube can be a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if any of you have your own YouTube channels, I highly suggest YouTube as a place to store your own content, because you could end up making, monetizing your YouTube channels, and not only spending money, but recouping some of that money by monetizing. And the other paid social media places are Pinterest is 2%, Snapchat is 2%, Medium 2%, Reddit is 1%, and Quora is 1%. Now, these are the percentage of people that use these areas to purchase new products. So those are some things to keep in mind when you're looking at using social media. Anyone, any other questions? Well, one of the things as we're waiting, and again, you can jump in at any time. I know the tendency is to try and go the cheapest or least expensive route that we can. But the bottom line is we know that you get what you pay for. So you really have to think of who your audience is so that you can understand whether or not you're a good match. And do you want quantity or do you want quality? Now, if you pay more with your quality, you may get a higher reach of those who's qualified consumers. Though that means there are people more likely to buy whatever it is that you're selling. But maybe you want quantity. You just want to pay as little as possible to get your message out in front of as many people as possible, regardless of who those people are. So those are some of the areas you have to zero in first before you begin trying to determine your marketing strategy. You definitely can get it cheaper with cable, but you have to buy more. And as long as you're willing to do that, and you understand that, then your reach could have yield positive results. Any other questions?
Do you need a in many cases, can the individual purchase on their own, or do they need a third party?
No, you'll see a lot of media buyers that will tell you how it's best that you get them to go in and do your buys. Now, I'm going to tell you why that's helpful, because number one, they do have the contacts. They know how to negotiate the contracts. There are a lot of things that go into your media buy. They can determine, because they do this, they can determine the best route, the best use of your money. They know the people that can give you the best deals, because everything is negotiable. And if they have a long history with, say, an ABC station in your market, they may be able to get you a better play time and negotiate a better deal. It's one of those issues, one of those things where it's not necessary, though, because if you do your own homework, you do your own legwork, you can still yield some positive results. But if you don't have the time, the energy, the effort, a media buyer can always help. Any other question? You know, when you do the marketing, you can the email, the e-blast marketing, the e-marketing, social media. One of the great things about those is that you can zero in on zip codes. So you can pay you can pay say $1,000 for 50,000 people to zero in on those particular people. So if I want to do an advertising for a campaign to help more people buy homes, then I know that I want to zero in on a market of potential home buyers. You can narrow those markets on social media. You can narrow those markets with e-marketing campaigns so that you can hit that direct audience. You wouldn't want to waste your money sending e-marketing and e-blast to a bunch of 17-year-olds on home buying. And so what e-marketing, targeted e-marketing or marketing does is allows you to zero in on those particular individuals that can be best served by whatever product or service that you're selling. Any questions? I'm pulling up a rate card here to give you an example of some print rates. When you're looking at print rates, a lot of them again, depends on the Chronicle, which is the Houston's largest newspaper, is going to cost more than a Houston Defender or another weekly newspaper. But you're also looking at the reach. Most of them will run, the smaller newspapers, the weekly newspapers will run between $30 and $40 per column inch. So that means if you want to get a fourth of an ad, a half page ad, and then if you package it together with their email marketing and their social media, then you can get the most bang for your buck. For example, one of the campaigns at some of the local newspapers, you have a print rate that includes social media. And that's, you can get 89,000 impressions for $1,400. So what does that mean? What is 89,000 impressions? That means 89,000 people are laying eyes on your product or service for $1,400. There's another one, services 480,000 impressions for $5,800. Now, does impressions mean they're buying your product or service? No, it doesn't. It means those are eyes laid on your product. But if you go back to earlier when I talked about how do you decide to buy, I don't know about you, but if I'm surfing social media and I see a cute dress, I click on that. If I see something that interests me, if I see a movie I want to go to or an event I want to attend on social media, I click on that and go into getting more information. So those eyes on your product are crucial. So that's why it's important to consider the social media and the email marketing. And a lot of times you can buy all of those together, and that's where you get the best bang for your buck. In terms of email marketing, you can see there are some places, the industry average to reach 25,000 people, you're looking at about $750. To reach 50,000 people, you're looking at about $1,150 to $1,500. And to reach 50,000 people or up and up, that can run you about $22 per CPM, which is cost per thousand. And again, those are looking at, when you're looking at e-marketing, you a lot of times may look at what comes in your email box. These are the people that have signed up. You always want to go with someone that has opted into email marketing. Don't ever do cold calling email marketing. And that's a way for your, again, product to go into the eyes of people that it serves. Any other questions? Okay, they told me you guys wanted questions on how to get your product in front of people and the best ways to navigate media buys. I'd love to hear where some of some of you guys are from and what it is that you do, to see if perhaps I can tailor some ideas on getting your product out. So any volunteers?
It's just the Tucker and Rashonda show today. But one of the things that I know for our extension agents, they offer free programs for small producers, farmers. They offer programs on home buying. They offer really programs that across the board help people improve their lives. And so to me, the disconnect is always in the fact that some of those topics, although everybody may need them, do not resonate for.
Okay, so she froze again. So I think what she's saying is that some of the topics. Okay, sorry, you had frozen for a minute. So you were saying some of the topics don't resonate with people?
No, I'm saying some of the topics would not resonate with local news. Because they always want a press release, right? They always want a press release, and then the media doesn't show up, which we know that they likely will not. And so what are some of the other ways to help them to get people to come and sit in on these workshops and these programs that they are offering?
Well, a lot of times, number one, you can't take take it personal because location. For example, Tucker, I can tell you, I know now yours is with you being in Prairie View. You're 45 minutes from either one of the TV stations, the radio station. So it has to be something major for them to send a crew. So people have to keep that in mind. Your location matters. It also matters if you're looking to get press, if it's just what they're looking at is if you send us a press release, we get 1,000 press releases. So that's where it goes back to the branded content and the canned feature stories. If you don't have the media, if you can't get the media out, you can still get coverage by saying you missed our kickoff of our home buying workshop, but here's a recap of it. And you have a picture and you have a story or video, and they can do a news story. Again, if you look at any news station, newspaper, digitally, you can see content is key. Everyone needs content, and it's gotten to the point where they share content a lot. And so if you send those already done, if they don't come out to cover your event, if you send it already written with a picture or video, your chances of getting coverage probably double. And so that is definitely a way to get your information out to the public. Another thing to think about, though, is think visually. As news stations are deciding what they want to cover, they're looking for visuals. So if your home buying program, for example, has, we have 100 kids that are going to be here as they get a new home. Well, I'm the assignment editor. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh, that's going to be great visuals. So I'm going to make sure that I send someone out to cover it. So when you're pitching, especially television, you want to make sure that you're giving them something that will be visually appealing to make it something that they want to cover with. Now, we know that's not always possible, but whenever possible, think in that regard. You also want to think about the time that you're covering it, or you're asking them to come. If you want them to come and cover a press conference at noon, well, half the time that they have noon newscasts. So their reporters have to be live somewhere already. Their reporters have to have wrapped up a story by noon. So they can't technically be covering one unless it's, again, something major. So all of those things should be to go into account when you're considering your coverage. Anyone else? All right, well then I had another one on gaining. How many of you do analytics? Do any of you do analytics in terms of looking at what it is that you're reaching for? It would help me out a little bit more if I kind of knew the areas of some of the people. So even if you don't come on camera, I would love to hear where you're working and what type of coverage you're trying to get. Are you looking for paid advertising? Because I wanted this to be a little bit more interactive and not just me talking to you guys all the time.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you? Hi, everyone. I am actually looking at past analytics right now from the various platforms in a new position. So I'm just trying to see what has been working. And it's a little hard because a lot of their social platforms were deleted before I came on board. So I'm kind of starting from scratch, but not necessarily paid advertising, but figuring out which platforms, other than just the general numbers that we know in terms of which ones are most used, which platforms to work for the purposes of reaching their various audiences. So in my specific example, it's farmers, it's extension people, it's researchers, graduate students, those types, NGOs, and it's for the purpose of sharing when there are grants available for them, as well as educational resources. So I'm kind of just restarting the platforms, posting some basic content for now, more asking questions of them than doing a whole lot of posting first, meeting with them. And it's 13 different states, two territories. So it's a lot of different types of things that I'm trying to figure out. I wanted to know, is there rubric might not be the best word, but just for lack of a better one right now, a rubric of some kind that you have used or seen that was useful when you're at this stage of the game, you know, in terms of figuring out what's best and keeping a tally of that.
Let me see if I understand your question. Is there a rubric that I use in determining which platform is best?
Pretty much assessing that, yeah, because the analytics will tell you the things specific to the various platforms individually, but outside of the platforms themselves, because some of it may end up being flyers to certain places, bulletin boards, going on radio, creating a passport, what do you call it, podcast. So there's so many different ways of getting this type of information out, other than just reaching out to the PR or communications people from all the various universities, mailing lists of NGOs and so on. I'm just wondering about, I'm looking for other ways.
Yes, definitely. So one of the things that we try to do is we look at what's working. So when we're looking at our analytics, we look at the stories that resonate the most. And that tells us what readers want to see and what they react to and engage with. Because what you don't want is to just put up information. You want engagement, because that's what gets people into your story. So I would look deeper into the analytics of what is getting that engagement, what people are reacting to, what causes them to click. And so those are the type of things you want to deliver more of. So if you just send out a press release, are you getting a response from that? Or if you write that into a canned feature, do you get a better response from that? If you focus more on people, we find that people make a big difference. So if you focus more on people, do you get a response from that? So those that we really use analytics more than just glancing at them. We use analytics to analyze what works, what doesn't, and build from it. I use a prime example of, I was working with an organization, and they sent out newsletters constantly. And we looked at the analytics, and we discovered the newsletters, not only were they not getting the open rate, they weren't getting any type of engagement, any type of click through. And so that became a waste of time for our staff. And we decided to divert our efforts elsewhere. And we only were able to make that analysis by looking at the analytics over the past month. So that's one of the main things that I tell everybody, is to make sure you just look at what's working and what's not, and don't be afraid to punt. You also can really just go onto various social media pages for other people that are similar to yours, whether it's other universities, and look at what is getting engagement from those schools. Now, what you don't want to look at is, okay, they have 1 million followers, but they only get 2 comments, or they only get 2 shares, because then that's telling you they don't have the engagement, and that's what you want, is the engagement. We have a comment in the chat that says, I work for Mississippi State University Extension Service. We provide education on subjects similar to those Tucker mentioned. I've done both paid broadcast buys, both radio and TV, as well as paid social media advertising. Last year, I discovered that the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters offers a special program for educational or nonprofit TV spots. So they paid about $20,000 for 2 months and received more than $280,000 in airtime. Yes, thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. That is some valuable information. Comcast has a program that I'm not sure if they're still doing it. I urge you all to look into it, because what they'll do a lot of times is they'll match your advertising. And so it's Comcast. You will meet with them and decide where your stuff will be placed on the cable networks. And you can get, just as Elizabeth did, you can get $300,000 worth of coverage for $30,000. So they match and they build upon, and it's all of their efforts to help businesses and companies and school education institutions grow their audience and grow their base. So definitely look at programs with your local cable to see if they offer anything like that.
I have I'd like to piggyback on Elizabeth's example and ask, Elizabeth, what were the results that you guys were looking for when you entered into that? And were you able to use some sort of metric to gauge whether that investment was fruitful?
That's a great question, Tucker, and I don't really have a good answer. It was a grant-driven project for COVID vaccine education, and our faculty member who got the grant had $20,000 for TV work. And so for in my research, that seemed to be the best use of that $20,000 was to enter into this arrangement with the Mississippi Association of Broadcasters. And so really all we got back from them was just that reach number, that kind of viewership number. We didn't get much more than that. We didn't get a schedule showing the times that the spots aired or anything like that. It was just the total reach. So it satisfied the grant, and the granting agency was good with that number. But for me, I would really like to have gotten more information about what times the spots aired, what shows they were on and all that kind of stuff. But, for something that's largely a gift, it was kind of hard to push for more than that. So I hope that helps.
As you're looking for ways to utilize your money, let me advise that you do your homework with everyone, especially email marketing. One of the things that I see a lot is there are these companies that you will pay money to, and they say, well, we'll get your press release, your cam feature or whatever out to, hundreds of people. And I don't have numbers to back up the effectiveness of that. All I can tell you is, as a journalist, seeing those come in. For example, there's a company, and it makes me cringe every morning. I come to my email box. They send me about 65 press releases a day. That when I log in, I'm going to have 65 press releases from this one particular company, and all they've done is change the business name. So it may be, they may advertise a new book. So it'll say, Elizabeth Gregory has a new book. Carolyn Vendra has a new book. Tucker Wilson has a new book. So all of these releases, so each of these people have paid, and it's going in front of a person like me, and it's going in front of media, and we just delete because it's a cookie cutter. But everybody has paid, and they're thinking that, okay, my release is being sent to all of these people, but it's not doing you any good because it's not getting open. So be careful of those mass marketing, email marketing type programs that will charge you a lot of money and say, we're going to send this out to 100,000 people, but they're failing to tell you that we're going to send 65 of these out daily to 100,000 people, and they very rarely get open.
So it sounds to me like some sort of metric needs to be applied to whatever it is that you're doing, so that going in. Yes, I'll finish your sentence for. Yes, so going in, you need to, your homework has to be done. Yeah, go ahead, you froze for a minute. Oh, okay, I was gonna say leveling expectations, because I once had the TV station came out and had one of my research scientists on, and she talked with him for 15 minutes. But then when the actual program came on, or when he had 2 little snippets of sound bites, and he felt like, well, what happened here? You need to send this out to more people. And so I think leveling expectations, both with the paid media and even the free media. Absolutely. When, with the television station, you will be lucky to get, I'm sure you all know this, the 10, 15-second soundbite out of a 2-hour interview. And so one of the things that you may want to do is make sure that you are giving those expectations of what to expect to the people that are doing the interview, those people that you're scheduling for those things, so that they are prepared and they're not upset, like Tucker's person she's talking about. If they go in knowing we're going to do all of this, and you're going to give maybe 1 or 2 quotes, and that'll help by leveling those expectations. Dara had another quote in the chat. In addition to using the pre-existing email listservs, I'm starting more grassroots for now.
I'm meeting with various audiences and stakeholders in person and virtually, then asking them what works in their region. I then take note of their response and also am collecting the names and contact info to build relationships with their successful influencers. Not necessarily spending yet on specific paid marketing efforts, but keeping an eye and an ear out for those opportunities based on what I hear is effective from the various regions area. That is 1000% smart because you want to go in and not just go in throwing money. Because what we've seen a lot of is people will come in and say, well, TV is where it's at, and I'm going to spend my entire budget on television advertising. And then you see zero results because there was a big fire next door at the same time your commercial aired. So you really have to be strategic and smart in your advertising. Television is a good usage, but you have to be positioned where you can do that multiple times, run that commercial multiple times. I encourage a blend of the two. If you can afford the television, radio, and print advertising, absolutely. But look at the as Dara said, the more grassroots efforts to a lot of times when you post things, if you go on or you have your staff go on and engage in your posts, because that's where a lot of us go wrong. We post something on our social media pages and then we go on about our business because, of course, we got more important things to do than to be on social media. But if you want to get people talking about whatever it is you've posted, you have to have that engagement. And that engagement starts with maybe just in the morning. And we have our morning meeting at the newspaper, and we take 5 minutes and have the staff go on and like the stories or maybe comment on the stories. Because what that does is that's creating engagement for each of those individual people that have commented. Now their audiences can see it. And that's more eyes on your product or service. Okay. Any tips for getting the most value out of paid promotions for your social media accounts like Facebook to gain more followers and grow your audience? Yes, Inga, and that is another area where people are really, they will think I posted on Facebook and I'm good, but 11 people saw your post. The difference between social media and cable is not a whole lot. It has to be seen a lot. And so but the difference is you're not paying to do it on social media. So you want to post multiple times. It may seem like overkill, but I don't have the exact number. There is your message on Facebook. I think it has to be seen, posted 11 times before people see it. And so that's a matter, we're not saying post the same thing 11 times, but what you want to do is make sure that you're constantly posting. It may seem again like we're just doing way too much, but you can never be doing too much because keep in mind when you're going to your own social media, you may, if you go to your timeline, you may scroll back 3 or 4 times and it'll go back the last hour. If anybody posted anything before that, you're going to miss it. And so that's why you have to be active on your social media pages. You can't post and leave, post and walk away. And that's where I said it comes in and getting that broken up. You having members of your staff, maybe one of you post in the morning, one of you come in the afternoon and like that post or comment on that post. And what that does is it continues. And these are paid promotions as well, because the more people talking about it and engaging in it, the more it increases the algorithm of social media. Any other questions?
Yes, I wonder if because of the that was all really great. Thank you so much. I'm wondering if anyone else is dealing with large regions that, okay, 13 states, obviously one Facebook page that covers things with 13 states and 2 territories is not going to be the content that anyone in any one corner of a state is going to want to see everything on there. So, strategies for that and how people end up utilizing that. And what I have been doing that has been building engagement just organically is, sharing some of what our farmers and others are sharing, especially when they mention us. And that has been encouraging more of them to mention us and actually tag our handle, both on Instagram and Facebook specifically. And so whenever they do that, of course, sharing it and thanking them and just restating whatever they stated. And that seems to be regenerating even more engagement, not only from them, but from their followers. So that's great for specific things. And I see somebody put something in the chat that they're doing national as well, but just any tips for, yeah, it's not easy for when you have that many different types of, and maybe not types, but locations of audiences. I am posting national content that affects all of them, of course, and giving them more than doing any kind of promotion using like that 4-to-1 rule. But just any other tips.
Yeah, so one of the things, and again, this may seem like a little extra work, but it works. So we have this thing with the newspaper where some of the stories that we cover, we look at their social media following. We have a girl that we did a profile on recently, and it was just a story on her, but we knew based on her own social media page that she was going to share that story multiple times, and she shared it over and over and over, and then other people shared it over and over, and so the story developed legs. There are some people that you can tag and they won't even go look at the information. So kind of think of that. You don't want to tag every single person that you mention and every single business that's related. But if you see that they have a lot of engagement, look at their own pages. If they said, hey, we were covered, the Mississippi State University had a great program that we were featured at, and they tagged us in it, and they're posting that on their own page. So those are the type of people you want to continue to nurture those relationships with, because you know that they're going to share your content, and ultimately that's what builds the eyes on your product or service. Okay, well, if there are no more questions or comments, yeah, getting the media coverage is, it can be difficult. I urge you, again, just to wrap it up, to do what you can on the free spectrum first. My publisher would probably be like, no, don't tell them that. But yes, do what you can free first, and then utilize those budgets smartly and strategically. I think that's the bottom line, which is most important, is to be strategic. We have a tendency to just automatically gravitate toward television because that's like the king of the castle. But it doesn't do you any good to be the king if nobody can reach you. And so you want to go where you can get the most effective use of your budgets. And sometimes that is not through television. It's social media first, then that e-marketing, branded content. I encourage you to consider the branded content. Even with some of the stories that we do at my newspaper, we will send it out and it'll go to national stories all over. We send it to the National Newspaper Association, and it's picked up all over the country. And that comes with just you sending a story with a photo already done. And again, especially with the fact that everyone needs content digitally, that can help grow. We did have developing a podcast that focuses on the success of our target audiences. Any tips related to that? Podcasts are great. Consistency is key. So in developing your podcast, you just have to become a go-to place where people know that they can come and get whatever it is you're featuring on your podcast. But the consistency is the key to that, because your audience will drop off if you miss 2 or 3 weeks, or whether I suggest podcasts weekly, which is why we have yet to do one, because we don't have the bandwidth to do it weekly. But that's where you're going to get the most effective use of your audience continuing to come back. So just make sure that you're consistent with whatever it is you're covering on your podcast.
Okay, folks, as you can see, if you keep asking, she'll keep answering and keep talking and keep talking. But We do want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is now 2:23. Ms. Rashonda Tate Billingsley, we certainly appreciate you. Thank you so much for the wealth of information that you shared with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.